Juan Mendez Scott's Mystery Magazine.
The Bachelor Party, Chapter 13. The Distant Rumble of Thunder. The sky was a dull gray, the sun hidden behind thick clouds that threatened rain, but never delivered. The air was heavy, stifling, and thick with the scent of freshly turned earth. We stood around Desmond Des Thompson's grave, the preacher's voice droning on, his words barely registering through the haze of grief and tension that hung over the cemetery. I could feel the weight of the day pressing down on me, the guilt and sorrow mingling into something unbearable. Des's friends were gathered close to the casket, their heads bowed, tears streaming down their faces. Jerome and Marcus stood together, shoulders shaking as they wept openly. Ali was clutching a handkerchief to her face, her sobs muffled, while Darnell stared at the ground, his expression a mix of anger and devastation. This was the finality of it, the cold reality that Des was really gone, and nothing would bring him back. And then there was Tasha. She stood apart from the others, her eyes locked on me, with a hatred so intense it burned. Tears ran down her face, but they weren't just tears of grief, they were tears of fury. She blamed me. Of course she did. I could see it in the way her hands trembled, the way her lips curled into a snarl whenever our eyes met. To her, I wasn't just the man who'd driven the limo the night Des died. I was the man who had destroyed her world. The preacher finished speaking, closing his Bible with a soft thud, and nodded to the pallbearers. Slowly, they began to lower Des's casket into the ground, the creaking of the ropes the only sound in the still air. The finality of the moment hit everyone at once. Des was gone, and this was goodbye. As the casket disappeared from view, I felt a hand on my arm. I turned to see Nia standing beside me, her eyes filled with concern. "Let's go," she whispered, her voice gentle, low, but firm. She knew I couldn't take much more of this. I nodded, grateful for her presence, and we started to walk toward the limo parked a short distance away. But before we could make it to the car, I heard Tasha's voice, sharp and filled with venom. "Malik!" I stopped, turning to face her. She was being held back by Jerome and Marcus, but she struggled against them, her eyes blazing with fury. "This is your fault!" she screamed, her voice raw with emotion. "You killed him, Malik. You were always jealous that I chose Des instead of you." Her words hit me like a slap, each one sinking deep into the wounds I thought I'd numbed. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, but the truth was nothing I could say would change how she felt. She needed someone to blame, and I was the easiest target. "Tasha, stop," Nia said, stepping between us, her voice calm but commanding. "This isn't the time or place." But Tasha wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on me, filled with a hatred that had been building since the night Des died. "You think you're so much better than him, don't you? You think you can just walk away from this? You'll never be anything, Malik. You were just waiting for your chance to take him out, weren't you?" I opened my mouth to speak, but Nia squeezed my arm, a silent reminder that engaging with Tasha now would only make things worse. I shut my mouth and turned away, leading Nia toward the limo. Tasha's screams followed us, her words becoming more hysterical as we moved farther away. "You'll pay for this, Malik. I swear you'll pay for this shit." I didn't look back. I couldn't. The grief and rage in her voice tore at me, but I couldn't let it drag me down. Not now, not after everything that had already happened. Nia and I reached the limo, and I opened the door for her, then climbed in after her. The interior was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. I settled into the driver's seat, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Nia sat beside me, her presence a calming force in the storm that threatened to swallow me whole. As I started the engine and pulled away from the cemetery, Tasha's hateful words echoed in my mind. I could still see the look in her eyes, the way she had stared at me, as if I was the one who had taken everything from her. Maybe I had, but I couldn't change the past. I couldn't undo what had happened. The road stretched out before us, empty and gray. Naya reached over, placing her hand on mine as I gripped the steering wheel. "You did what you could, Malik," she said softly. "Don't let her words get to you." I nodded, but the weight of Tasha's accusations still pressed down on me. As we drove away, leaving the cemetery and everything that had happened there behind us, I knew that this was just the beginning of a long road ahead. A road filled with questions, doubts, and the ghosts of what might have been. But with Nia beside me, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way through this. Maybe I could find a way to live with what had happened and finally start moving forward. The ride was silent, the only sound the hum of the engine and the distant rumble of thunder in the sky above. The storm wasn't over yet, not outside, and certainly not within me. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't facing it alone.
On the next episode of Juan Mendez Scott's Mystery Magazine, The Bachelor Party Chapter 14. Finally, the life I always wanted.